Hotel. Welcome to Journey in the Self. I'm your host, Sarah. Today we're going to do part two of our discussion about the testimony of Dr. Anthony Fauci on the Senate floor, um, hosted under the chairmanship of Senator Rand Paul. In his testimony, which I watched at length today, I saw that not Rand Paul, but Fauci, I think they said, pleaded the fifth 111 times. And I'll point out that when someone pleads the fifth, they plead the fifth because they fear that something that they're going to say, if they do testify, would incriminate them. And so they plead the fifth in order to avoid self-incrimination. In other words, if he were to tell the truth, since he's under oath, the truth would be incriminating. Thus, he invoked his option not to testify because the truth would have incriminated him, despite the fact that he's been pardoned by former President Biden. Okay, so the last time I came in a little bit late in the recording, so there were some things that I said at the beginning that didn't get recorded. So I'm going to recount some of those things that I said at the beginning of the show. So, because I thought that they were important in terms of setting the show up. So I'll repeat those things. So when I was on with Brother Sadiki, I had recounted a time when I was in junior high school. And I think I was in the 8th grade at the time. And it was the first day of our history class. And our history professor started the class by saying this. He essentially said, there are two views of history. He said, there's the accidental view of history, which suggests that throughout the course of history, it has just occurred. History is happenstance. It's accidental, the accidental view of history. That there is no rhyme or reason to it, that it has just occurred, unfolded. Then he said, there's also the conspiratorial view of history, which suggests that throughout the course of time, groups of people have come together to plot the course of history, to lay out how they wanted history to unfold, and establish plans to carry it out. Then he said, we will teach the former, and left it there and began the class. He didn't say which one was true. He said which one he was allowed to teach. I've always considered that statement, and I've never forgotten it. I've always considered that statement to be one of those, let he that hath ears to hear, let them hear type of statements. And I feel like I was the only one in that class who understood what he had to say. So I've never forgotten that. And though I was already so inclined, that basically validated my inclination to seek the truth and it validated that the truth was not what was recorded in traditional history books, that there were some significant things that have been left out of history, that have been hidden from people. And so I made it my point in just about everything that I was interested in finding the information that was hidden, the things that they didn't want us to know. Which brings us to the whole situation with Fauci and this pandemic. And the title of this was Fauci testimony versus the truth. It was apparent by the fact that Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment that it was not his intention to espouse the truth during that hearing. But as we all know, or at least those of us who are aware, that many sources of information were hidden. Many people were silenced, censored. The truth was concealed. Scientists were silenced. Doctors who did not espouse the party line, if you will, who did not abide by the government and media narrative about COVID-19 or about the vaccine, those people were silenced, censored. Some of them threatened. Some of them had their businesses destroyed. I did shows. Those were censored from YouTube at the time. Sadiki and I did a couple of shows, and those were removed. Many information sources were eliminated. But we're living in a time when truth cannot be hidden for long. Truth will be revealed. We're on the cusp of the Aquarian age. The Aquarian age, as I know, the age of information. So information is coming out. And now, what, 6 years, 7 years after the pandemic, um, we're allowed to be able to speak the truth. And there's one other thing I wanted to point out, before I start getting into more of the information. There has been a shift in who is considered to be conspiracy theorists. Okay, so when I first began in-depth research into esoteric world affairs, and that was after I was first introduced to Brother Steve Coakley. During those days, and we give big time honor and praise to our late ancestor, my brother and friend, Brother Steve Coakley, because I would not be doing this if it not were not for him. I wouldn't know any of this information that I know if it weren't for him. Um, but during those days, the type of information that we're talking about, the type of information that was presented during the hearings by Senator Rand Paul, and then back during, I think it was 2020, 2021, uh, Republican Senator Jim Jordan. And indeed, some of the information that uh, your so called Republicans or conservative conspiracy theorists 20 to 25 years ago, all of this information would have been considered, was considered left wing or liberal conspiracy theories. The exact same information was considered to be left wing and liberal conspiracy theories. Okay. Fast forward to today, the exact same information that people write off as right wing conspiracy theories were left wing conspiracy theories. The parties have basically just shifted positions, which I contend is a plan to confuse people, because people just outright dismiss anything that's related to conspiracy theories and will dismiss certain information if it is not in alignment with the party that or philosophy that they have identified with. So people just write off anything that's said by conservatives or Republicans or MAGA as if nothing that they have to say is true. And then the other side does the same thing with liberals or the Democrats. Okay. But the truth is that both of them will include some truth in to what they reveal, what they discuss. They will include some truth, but they'll mix it in with a number of untruths. So people don't know what to believe, or they will believe the party or philosophy that they're aligned with and everything that they say, because for them, everything has been validated by the little truth that they've shared. And so then they'll just believe everything else that they have to say without doing any independent research, just by virtue of the fact that they shared a little bit of truth. Both parties do that now. And so it's for someone with a discerning mind, someone who thinks for themselves, to be able to make the determination as to what information is true, going beyond who is providing the information. What Brother Steve Coakley told us to do was to research any information, regardless of the package that it came in. Research from right wing sources, research from left wing sources, whatever sources that there are, get the information and then draw the conclusions ourselves. Think, as George Clinton would say, think it ain't illegal yet. Okay. So the other thing that we did, we showed a couple of definitions of conspiracy. So here's one definition. Actually, I want to show this one first. Conspiracy: planning and acting together secretly, especially for an unlawful or harmful purpose, such as murder or treason. The plan agreed on, plot, the group taking part in such a plan, a combining or working together, the conspiracy of events. Another definition is the definition of conspiracy is a secret plan to do something or is the action of creating a secret plot. Okay. I bring this up because the other thing that we pointed out last time was that the term conspiracy theory was coined and created by the intelligence community to denounce people who are revealing the truth or to denounce truths and to characterize them in such a way to discourage people from paying attention to what certain people are saying or to invalidate actual truths such that people don't pay any attention to it, that people just discount the information as being untrue just by virtue of the fact that they've labeled the information as conspiracy theory or labeled a person as conspiracy theorist, a means to discredit information or people. Okay, so I wanted to bring that to the forefront. There's a plethora of information that I want to share with you, but before we get to the information, I want to just show some excerpts of information that has been recorded that I posted on my Facebook page because I thought it was important. Some of these things are clips from the congressional testimony. Uh, some of these are articles. Okay, so we're going to go to some of the information. Just bear with me. I have to remove some information before I can provide. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this was a post from Rand Paul. I'm not going to go to that article, but the reason that I bring this one up is because I had gotten into a debate with someone who said that Fauci did not admit that masks are ineffective, and he did. And I have found the quote where he didn't indeed say that masks did not prevent the spread of COVID or the spread of COVID and then were ineffective. Okay. This I do want to show, and hopefully you can hear it.
Cameron Kyle Seidel, ER and critical care doctor from New York City. We typically use ventilators to treat what's called respiratory failure. That is, we use the ventilator.
Okay, I want to set this up. This is a doctor who is sharing what occurred during the pandemic from a practical standpoint, this is what was going on during the pandemic in hospitals. And so he's sharing his experiences and observations about what was actually going on in the hospitals and what they were being told to do.
This is Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel, ER and critical care doctor from New York City. We typically use ventilators to treat what's called respiratory failure. That is, we use the ventilator to do the work that the patient's muscles can no longer do because they're too tired to do it. These patients' muscles work fine. I fear that we are I fear that if we are using a false paradigm to treat a new disease, that the method that we program the ventilator, one based on a notion of respiratory failure as opposed to oxygen failure, that this method, and there are a great many number of methods we can use with the ventilator, but this method being widely adopted at this very moment in every hospital in the country, which aims to increase pressure on the lungs in order to open them up, is actually doing more harm than good. And that the pressure we are providing to lungs, we may be providing to lungs that cannot stand it, that cannot take it, and that the ARDS that we are seeing, that the whole world is seeing, may be nothing more than lung injury caused by the ventilator.
Let me just say this. If I admit a patient to the hospital and they're on Medicare and they have just routine pneumonia for a diagnosis, the hospital will get a lump sum payment called a DRG, and it'll be about $4,600. If I admit that same patient and I attach COVID-19 to the pneumonia diagnosis, then it goes from $4,600 to $13,000 for that admission, regardless of whether the patient's in a hospital for 3 days or 13 days. If during that hospitalization, I put the patient on a ventilator for a period of time, then the payment goes from $13,000 to $39,000. Now that's a big payment.
This is Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel, ER and critical care doctor.
Okay, so there's two things that we learned from that video. One was that if someone came to the hospital and had congestive symptoms, if they were admitted for something like pneumonia or a cold or something like that, they got, like, I think they said $4,600 or something like that. But if they were diagnosed with COVID, they got a significantly higher amount. And so they were financially incentivized to classify the illness that they were admitted under as being COVID related. They also put the patients under a ventilator. Now, I remember back in 2020 when the pandemic was active, I had read a number of reports and listened to a number of doctors, including, I think it was Dr. Carrie Madej and a number of doctors, and we'll mention her and come across some of her information a little later. But they had suggested that the reason people were dying was because of the fact that they were being put on ventilators, as this first doctor here suggested, that it was the ventilator that was killing people, not COVID-19. And the treatments that they were undergoing, which included the ventilators. They were also given, he didn't mention this, but they were given this drug called remdesivir, which was mentioned during the Fauci testimony by one of the Republican senators or doctors, I'm not sure which one. But they brought up the fact that they were being treated with remdesivir. Nurses colloquially referred to remdesivir as run death is near because of the large percentage of people who were treated with remdesivir died. If we have time, we will go into some information about remdesivir, which was a treatment, a drug that was touted and promoted by Anthony Fauci, knowing that it was proven to be ineffective. Okay, then I came across this article. This was published by Christina Aguayo News on July 30th. And it says former director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, says that Fauci's performance in front of Congress was disgusting, and she's reminding everyone of the information that she released on her final day of office about Anthony Fauci's crimes. Again, I'm not a supporter of Tulsi Gabbard or the Republicans or MAGA or the Democrats, conservatives, liberals. I don't support any of them because they all take liberties with the truth, we'll say. Okay, so she says, Fauci's performance today made me sick, smug arrogance, zero remorse, zero accountability. He refused to answer a single question. He used your tax dollars to fund the coronavirus lab research in Wuhan and worked with the IC to cover it up. True. On the last show, we provided some documentation which validated that the NIH, through Anthony Fauci and the NIAID, which was a division of the NIH, National Institute of Health, funded the Wuhan lab by giving them two $3.4 million grants totaling $7.4 million to do the gain of function research in Wuhan, China, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And they did it there because gain of function research was banned in the United States under the Obama administration due to leaks from gain of function research that was occurring at Fort Detrick, Maryland. So they closed Fort Detrick, Maryland, and in order to circumvent and continue to do gain of function research, which Anthony Fauci was a major proponent, to circumvent the banning of gain of function research in the United States, they farmed it out to the Wuhan lab in China. Okay, so I'll read this, and then our guest has joined us, but I want to just go and read this, and then we'll welcome our guest, Brother Sadiki. This is use your tax dollars to fund the coronavirus lab research in Wuhan and work with IC to cover it up. We deserve truth and accountability. Gabbard's statement about Fauci on her final day in office. Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain of function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is what I just said, and which we talked about on the last show. Work which is widely viewed as a source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. We will take issue as to whether it was unintentional or not, because we know that they were doing the research, the gain of function research, and had intended to introduce it into the public, because that simultaneously, as we documented on the last show, they were simultaneously working on the vaccine and nanotechnology, which we'll have our brother Sadiki speak on. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate (BS), um, she's releasing never before seen communications and documents expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions. True. The virus lab leak origins and the role in directing and the and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating intelligence community assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when under oath he denied knowledge of and participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. I've seen those documents, and that did occur. We've received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Yes, I did recall when I was doing research back in 2020 that there were a number of different intelligence community sources that were at least 80% convinced that the virus spread from the Wuhan lab in China, not what the government was trying to convince people to believe. So Dr. Fauci's close relationship with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-fund research, coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma in their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. I did find a couple of those patents that had Dr. Fauci's name on it, so he financially benefited from it as well. Second, Dr. Fauci was behind the scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars. True. The narrative, the government and the media narrative, was that it originated from a wet market in China, and that somehow the bat coronavirus was transmitted to humans at that wet market in China. Yeah, all of this was a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame of attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship from every available platform. True. We talked about that. Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives. Now, Fauci didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his own sworn testimony. We received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization. Many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by the managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which were not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process as they made their complaints, and also insisting that the managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where their whistleblowers are coming forward with their testimony. So obviously creating that atmosphere of intimidation. COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world. Now, after lies, years after lies of censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability. Tactics were used to hide the truth. They're straight from the deep state playbook. Deep state. I'll comment about that later. Politicized, self-serving leaders, Dr. Fauci. Well, I don't need to read that. Okay, deep state is a euphemism for the what's the word I want? The establishment.
Mm-hmm.
So Trump's ran and his MAGA ran on the premise of removing the deep state, cleaning the swamp, and so forth. But they're part of the deep state as well, or the establishment. And I've documented that deeply on about like 18 shows that I've done. So they're not trying to clean up anything as far as the deep state. So our guest, Brother Sadiki Bakari, is on with us, and we're going to go a little deeper into the information and allow Brother Sadiki to share with us his expertise in the area of psychological warfare, manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
He's done exceptional research on the subject of transhumanism, which is highly involved in the vaccine, the fear mongering, manipulation. So we're going to go deep into that, and on the transhumanism front, Brother Sadiki has been a pioneer in this area. He's the first person I ever heard talking about it, and some people are kind of following on his coattails, but this brother's been on that, been a pioneer in that subject for a long time. So welcome back to show, Brother Sadiki.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for that introduction. As I always do, honor, reverence, gratitude for the ancestors. My mother, who is still with us, my father, who is an ancestor, obviously my wife, my children, my teachers as well, outside of my parents, Asha Kwesi, who I'm sure everyone is familiar with, Steve Coakley, who is an ancestor, Mary Baraka, who is an ancestor, OG Shaka Athenin, who is an ancestor, and of course, those who are still with us, people like yourself, Sarab, Brother Jamal, all of you. I've been able to learn from all of you, so I'm greatly appreciative for that. So I like to do that first and foremost. I see that seems like you was laying the groundwork in the foundation when I came in.
Indeed. So I went back and recounted the things that we had discussed at the beginning of the show last time, because that part didn't get recorded. So I talked about the conspiracy theory and the origin of that term and how it's used to basically discredit people who happen to be coming upon the truth and trying to share the truth. I shared the story about the my history teacher talking about the different views of history, and and I also made the point that and I didn't bring this up last time, but I made the point that back when Brother Jamal and I were first introduced to Brother Steve Coakley, at that time, this type of information that we're talking about, so-called right-wing conspiracies as we're familiar with today, back 20, 25 years ago, this was considered, all this information was considered to be left-wing conspiracy theory. Okay. And so I got a lot of this information back then from venues like Pacifica Radio, KPFK, which is a left-wing outlet. Okay. So this is just shifted. And I pointed out that they're doing this to keep people in a continuous state of confusion,
Yes.
because both sides will share snippets of the truth to delude their followers into thinking that everything that they're saying is true, when the majority of the things that they're saying is not. But most people don't take the time to research and discern truth from untruth. So
Hmm.
both sides will assume that whatever little truths that their party or uh, philosophy will espouse, that everything else that they have to say is true.
Hmm.
And that's how they keep people, in just continuous state of confusion. You want to speak on that a little?
Well, what I would like to do, brother, and I think this definitely adds to that. 2020 was a very important year from a standpoint of psychological operations, from a standpoint of um, fear-based programming, trauma-based programming, emotional-based programming, controlled opposition, cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, the Hegelian dialectic, all these aspects of manipulation, right? Programming, things of that nature. Even Dorvo is something that was heavily happening then that most of us didn't know about. Um, so just 2020 alone, the year of conspiracy, right? In regards to our lifetime. And what I mean by this is, yes, we had other things that took place, the crack epidemic and 9/11 and all these other things. But when we deal with 2020, and I just need about 88 seconds, brother, to lay this out. Okay.
Do your thing, brother.
All right. So 2020, the year of conspiracy, the year of hoaxes, the year of false diagnosis, bioweapons, biometric ID, threats of a cashless society or world beyond cash, the reset, DNA reset, spiritual and artificial, virtual schooling, fear-based programming, psyops programming, media manipulation, trauma and emotional triggering, controlled opposition, cognitive dissonance, doublespeak, charismatic, Stockholm syndrome, the Hegelian dialectic, predictive programming, live simulation of event 2001. Now we know that happened in 2019, but this was to get us ready for what was coming with COVID. A pandemic known as a pandemic or scandemic, viruses like COVID-19, outbreaks, false positives, COVID tests, alien disclosure on other planets, acute radiation syndrome, electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome, severe acute respiratory syndrome, threats of killer hornets, West Nile virus, bubonic plague, spreading the virus through testing, mandatory vaccines, false news stories, CDC guidance mandates, the 39 missing children found in Georgia, adrenochrome in Hollywood, spirit cooking celebrities, Kanye West for president, food droughts, weather engineering, California forest fires and energy weapons, earthquakes, hurricanes, fire tornadoes, negligent death certificates, insurance scams, the threat of vaccines and nanobots, 5G technology, psychotronic warfare, radio waves, psychoenergetics, government sponsored protesting, entanglements, pedophilia rings, quarantines and lockdowns, drug trafficking, child and organ trafficking, black man after black man murdered by police nationally or police terrorism in general, social distancing known as social engineering, stimulus checks, a record number of small businesses closing, and on and on and on. This is just 2020, and this is a snapshot. So this is what the masses of people, and not just here in the United States, but also internationally, this is just a snapshot of all the information and data that was being used to create the confusion that Brother Sarah was talking about. The chaos, the emotional programming, the attachments, the stimulation as far as, or stimuli as far as creating trauma based programming, as well as trauma bonding, the fear-based programming. So all the things that we're talking about, 2020 is a major jumpstart. Now, many of these things were already happening, but what I'm saying is 2020 was the culmination of all of these different things being used as the foundation for a massive programming. Now we see it today, especially dealing with the fraudcy um, um, testimony or whatever the situation is, the 111, I plead the fifth. So we see it, right? We see it, we see how people are responding. Okay. We see the pertinent things from a standpoint of the programming itself. All right. I mentioned Dorvo for a reason. All right. And the reason I mentioned it is to help us understand how the government, even this fraudcy piece right now. So the latest news that just came out this evening is now fraudcy is fearing for his life.
That's right.
Okay. Now, this is part of the Dorvo programming, mind manipulation, psychological manipulation, and that type of warfare. So just briefly, what Dorvo is primarily the victimizer or the abuser places themselves in a position to be seen and interpreted as the abused or the victim. All right. So you also see this in the Nolan Xavier Wells case right now, if you're really paying attention, just to use that as an example, and you see what the folks of Mississippi are doing, from whether you're dealing with the people who are supposed to be involved, the so-called friends, all the way up to the governor. That's what they're implementing. It's called Dorvo. Okay, so this is a military tactic and strategy that's used to impress upon the so-called victims or abused, to make them see their abusers and victimizers as the victims. All right. So that's what's taking place right now, just so people have an understanding of what's happening in real time, whether he's fearing for his life or not. The point is, this is what the media is giving to the masses of people. All right. So I just wanted to throw all of that out there. We'll definitely get into the nanotechnology and all of that, but I wanted to throw this out here so people can understand COVID or COVID-19. All these things I mentioned, there's a connection one way or another based on the programming. That's something we have to heavily understand. Now, these programs are cyclical. So they're being tapped into over and over and over again. Example, every 4 years is an election or a selection. That's your example of the programming that I'm talking about, the controlled opposition. That's cyclical. Every 4 years, we know it's going to happen. Democrats versus Republicans, we understand what's going to happen with that division and all of that. That's part of what it is that we're talking about. All right. So I'll stop there. And from here, we can go wherever we need to go.
Very well done, Brother Sadiki.
Thank you, brother.
And the importance of what Brother Sadiki shared with us there is that all of the things that he brought up, all of the different groups, activities that he laid out there, from the adrenochrome, from the pedophilia ring, music, private prisons. What's his name? Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
Kanye West. P. Diddy. All of these things are related. They are being conducted by the same groups of people.
Yes.
They fund the Republicans. They fund the Democrats. They fund liberals. They fund conservatives to basically create the type of psychological effect that Brother Sadiki just laid out. Okay, so I'm going to see. back in 2020, as I was doing my initial research, which I mentioned at the outset of the show, that when we were doing these shows, I was doing them, and Brother Sadiki had come on with me before. That when we were laying this information out back in the 2020s,
Mm-hmm.
we were censored. So all of those shows that we recorded were taken off of YouTube.
Mm.
Okay. And so
I didn't know that, brother.
yeah, they took all that stuff down, brother.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like taking the opportunity to go into this,
Mm.
because now, people can actually see what we said. So the only people who were able to benefit from the shows that we did were people who were watching us live.
Mm.
Okay, so back when I was doing my initial research, I came upon basically a white paper
Mm-hmm.
that was done by the Rockefeller Foundation and another think tank. And that white paper basically lays out the plan for the pandemic, or the pandemic, as Brother Sadiki would say.
Mm-hmm.
It lays it out. Now, mind you, the pandemic initially started in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
This paper was published in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me pull this, see if I can get it up. Ah. Okay, here we go. So bear with me as I pull it up.
While you're finding that, so in 2011, I was part of a newspaper article by Our Weekly, which was in reference to transhumanism. So you had people who was for it and people who was against it, so-called experts. In that article, I talked about transhumanism. We would see it through vaccines. Now, this was 2011, and I was not familiar with the paper that the white paper you're referring to from 2010. But I did talk about that in Our Weekly. Now, the so-called experts who was on there who was for transhumanism, I got so much hate mail, emails, things of that nature, saying that we would see it through the implementation of vaccines and things of that nature. Now, that was 2011. Okay. So we know what happened in 2020. We see where we are in 2026. Okay. So it's not new. That's the point. None of this that we're talking about is new. It was pre-planned. It was intentional. It was deliberate. Okay. We have to understand that. I know it's people who possibly may be listening who trust the government. That's an issue.
It's a big time issue, especially for Black people.
That's an issue. I often hear, well, why would they do that? I hear that so much in regards to the government. Let me make this clear. You have to study history to understand. And this is beyond just slavery, to understand the depths and psychosis of this government. And when I tell you, you can't fathom the things that this government has done biochemically, as far as warfare. We understand Tuskegee, we understand Congo. We know that these are real life things. We understand what happened with the flu, with cholera, H1N1, COVID-19, so on and so forth. So it's a long documented history that can easily be documented. There is a pattern, a pathology, a historical pattern and pathology of this. All right. So I just wanted to add that while you get to where you're going, brother.
Absolutely. MK Ultra,
Yes.
a number of different things where they basically experimented on
Mm-hmm.
US citizens. They did experiments on the military.
Mm-hmm.
And these people were unknowing that they were being used as guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could just go on and on and on and on and on. So anyone who would espouse the line, trust the government, especially if they're black,
Right.
are like completely out of their mind.
Yes.
Okay, so we see, so this white paper is called Scenarios for the Future of Technology
Mm.
and International Development. You see, the Rockefeller Foundation was a sponsor of this white paper along with this
Mm.
entity called the Global Business Network. Okay, so I'm not gonna go through the whole thing. Now we see this report was produced by the Rockefeller Foundation and Global Business Network, May 2010. The
Mm.
pandemic went down in 10 years later. Okay, I'll just read a little bit of this. Um, the results of our first scenario planning exercise demonstrate a provocative and engaging exploration of the role of technology in the future of globalization, as you will see in the following pages. Planning being the key word. Okay, for decades, technology has been dramatically changing not just the lives of individuals in developed countries, but increasingly the lives and livelihoods of people throughout the developing world. Whether it's a community mobile phone, a solar panel, or a new farming practice, or cutting edge medical device technology is altering the landscape of possibility in places where possibilities used to be scarce. Okay. Scenarios, which is what they mentioned in the outset. So the goal of this project was not to affirm what is already known and knowable about what is happening right now at the intersection of technology and development. Rather, was to explore the many ways in which technology and development could co-evolve, could both push and inhibit each other in the future, and then begin to examine what those possible alternative paths may imply for the world's poor and vulnerable populations, such as an exercise required to push their thinking far beyond the status quo into uncharted territory. Scenario planning is a methodology designed to help guide groups and individuals through exactly this creative process. Okay, remember what I said about the definition of conspiracy theory? Okay, so these people have come together to develop scenarios, hypotheses that allow us to imagine and then rehearse different strategies for how to be more prepared for the future, or more ambitiously,
Mm.
how to help shape better futures for ourselves. I think that falls in line with the definition of conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they go on to talk about why technology is a integral part of their plan.
Mm.
Scenarios are a medium through which great change cannot just be envisioned, but also actualized, and brought into existence. The more closely
Mm-hmm.
you read it, the more likely it becomes you will recognize how important but less obvious implications to you, your work, and your community. Okay, scenario framework. The Rockefeller Foundation and Global Business Network began the scenario processes by surfacing a host of driving forces that would affect the future of technology and international development. These forces were generated through both secondary research and in-depth interviews with foundation staff, foundation grantees, and external experts. So I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to go to the more significant pages. I have read this whole thing before, so I know which ones are the most relevant. Now, focus here on the three different or the four different scenarios that they've identified. Okay, so these are potential scenarios, quote unquote, that may occur. And so for each scenario, they developed remediation plans for each of the different scenarios. And remediation plans is what would we do if these things were to happen. Now, as we'll come to see, the hypothetical scenarios, one of them actually did happen, which takes it out of the realm of being hypothetical.
Mm.
Okay, so I'll just briefly read them, and I'll ask Brother Sadiki which one actually came to pass.
Okay.
Read the other ones first. Smart Scramble, an economically depressed world in which individuals, communities develop localized makeshift solutions to a growing set of problems. Hack Attack, an economically unstable and shock-prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. Clever Together, a world in which highly coordinated, successful strategies emerge for addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues. Lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. Which one do you think came to pass, brother?
Lockstep.
Correct.
The first one that you mentioned is happening. Lockstep has happened.
Correct. 100% correct. Okay. They threw in a little bit of the Clever Together there.
Mm-hmm.
But Brother Sadiki is 100% right. Lockstep is the scenario that did unfold. Okay. They go on to basically talk about how they developed the scenario narratives and so forth. Again, they're trying to give you the illusion that these are hypothetical situations. They do say that they may progress over the next 15 to 20 years. Okay. Now, let's go into Lockstep, since we've identified Lockstep as to what did happen. Mind you, again, this was written in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Scenario narratives. Lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. It says in 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for finally years. Again, this is written in 2010, and this is supposedly hypothetical. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, the new influenza strain originating from wild geese was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months, the majority of them healthy young adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. I remind you that this was written in 2010, and this is hypothetical. The pandemic blanketed the planet through disproportionate numbers, though disproportionate numbers died in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency. accelerating the spread of the virus, not just within the U.S. and across borders, but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better. China, in particular, the Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus earlier than in other countries and enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. Okay. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. I repeat, this was written in 2010 and was hypothetical. Even after the pandemic faded, the more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and activities stuck and even intensified. In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics to transitional terrorism to environmental crises and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained acceptance and approval. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Citizens were more tolerant and even eager for top-down direction and oversight, and national leaders had more latitude to impose order in the ways that they saw fit. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms. Biometric IDs for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulation of key industries whose stability was deemed vital to national interest. Many developed countries enforced cooperation with a suite of new regulations and agreements slowly but steadily restored both order and, importantly, economic growth. Across the developing world, however, the story was different and much more variable. Top-down authority took different forms in different countries, hinging largely on the caliber, capacity, and intentions of the leaders. In countries with strong and thoughtful leaders, citizens' overall economic status and quality of life increased. In India, for example, air quality drastically improved after 2016. I'll skip through that. Okay, it says strong technology regulation stifled innovation, kept costs high, curbed adoption in the developing world. Access to approved technologies increased, but remained limited. The locus of technology innovation was largely in the developed world, leaving many developing countries on the receiving end of technologies and others considered best for them. Okay, I think that's the key point that I wanted to bring out from this. Again, as we know, the majority of things that were laid out in that scenario, hypothetical quote unquote scenario, did actually occur. You want to expand on that a little bit, Brother Sadiki?
Absolutely. Definitely. So, first of all, when they use the term innovation, they're referring to AI and all that comes with AI, just so everyone is clear. Now, the difference between 2010, when those papers were written, and where we are now is AI. And it's AI that is being used as the infrastructure to implement those things in the white paper to another level. Okay? That's what we have to understand. Now, the white paper is 2010. Last show, I talked about Nanotechnology Initiative 2011 Strategic Plan. So this is the year after the white papers came out. Okay? So this was a 60-page document that lays out a projected future. Isn't this what the white papers were doing?
Yep.
To understand and control matter. You're the matter that they're talking about. for the management of every facet of human life with the surveillance matrix of environment, health, and safety. Well, what's the health and the safety? COVID.
Yeah.
And those types of psychological operations. All right. So we have to understand the pattern. That's what I'm mentioning it for. So people understand the pattern of what they're doing. So white pages were, or papers were, the Rockefellers, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So here we are with this 2011 nanotechnology initiative. Okay. So this is under the Obama administration. Also, the Obama Brain Project. This was $100 million allocated to the US for neuroscience. Now, whenever they're talking about neuroscience, they're talking about nanotechnology. Just so we understand in regards to the government. It's not just about studying your neurology. It's about understanding your neurology in order to implement artificial intelligence. All right. Whether that's what we dealt with in the last show, or even if that's us dealing with, other things in regards to central nervous system manipulation, patterns, remote control, remote neural monitoring, and things of that nature. So again, understand, what did I just read in regards to the 2011 nanotechnology initiative? Okay, to understand and control matter for the management of every facet of human life within the surveillance. That's the key word. Surveillance matrix of environment, health, and safety. So you're dealing with surveillance and counterintelligence. That's what this is for. So when you deal with COVID, understand that's what this is for, outside of eugenics. But this is about controlling you from an external source. Okay? That's where we are. Now, last show I mentioned, follow the patterns. I heard Sarah mention a pattern earlier. There's tons of patterns out here. Okay? You have patterns out here, magnetic manipulation dealing with the nervous system. Now, this is the reason 2020 was important from a standpoint of the vaccine or the dragon serum. This is how they will be able to infiltrate your being. The central nervous system is a major aspect of that because of the operations of the central nervous system. All right, the central nervous system is communicating, is messengers, it's all these different things that's connected to the many different aspects of your body, your brain, your organs, your blood, your heart, so on and so forth. It's connected to all these different aspects of your body. The purpose now is to take control of your infrastructure. All right, this is called the Internet of Humans. You being a human antenna. Okay, now, why are the patents important? The patents are important because what do patents prove? It proves that, in this case, a technology exists and it works. It's in operation. Okay, so what are patents dealing with magnetic manipulation and the central nervous system, as well as remote neural monitoring, remote control, and things of that nature, right? So here are some patents, U.S. patents, 6506148. That's a patent. Here's another patent, 6091994. Here's another patent, 6238333. That's another patent. 6011732. That's another patent. 5782874. This is another patent. Now, it's names that go with those patents. Now, I don't know if those are fictitious names, but there are names that are attached to those patents. Dr. Henry Lewis, Dr. Hank Lewis, Dr. Hendrikus Lewis, the Lewis group or Lois group. All right. Now, I don't know if these are fictitious names, but these are the names associated with these patents. These patents are real. Okay. Just so everybody understands, And there's other patents that
You lost Brother Sadiki for just a second. But while we wait for him to come back, actually, I was trying to
Can
bring
you hear
up.
me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay, I see what happened. So when I go into another window, um, it's not going to allow me to be heard. Okay, so that's fine. But understand when we deal with these different technologies, there's patents. When you deal with the COVID jab or the dragon serum, there are patents. When you deal with mRNA, there are patents. When you deal with the many different types of nanotechnology, there are patents. Whether you're dealing with the what is it, the lipids, whether you deal with the quantum dots and all the other things that we talked about, molecular robots, nanofibers, and things of that nature, those are all patented technologies. These are not things that people are creatively making up. These are real patents that exist. As I mentioned in the last show, weather patents, because that's important too. Because it's not just the dragon serum that's implementing these different types of nanotechnology, smart technologies, and things of that nature in people. All right. You're dealing with the air, you're dealing with the water, you're dealing with the food. So all of these patents, I have 300 and something patents dealing with weather alone from a class that I did in the past. I have over 300 documented patents dealing with weather modification, things of that nature, whatever people want to call it, HARP or whatever. But I have over 300 patents. So these are real technologies. People need to understand this. All right. So I just wanted to put that out there for people so people can understand that these are not just theories. These are real technologies that exist, that been existing. That's old technologies. These are old technologies. Let me make that clear. Let me preface this. These are old technologies. So whatever technologies that you are dealing with today are old. Anything that's in your hand is an old technology. Anything that they give you is a old technology. You are not dealing with new technology. You paying $2,000 for iPhones, that's old technology. Okay? You're at least 40, 50 years behind whatever technology is in your hand. The military is already dealing with 7G. Okay, just so people understand, possibly even 8G. But the public has 4G, maybe 5G. So that's what I'm talking about. That's the difference. China got 10G in certain places in China. Okay, so we got to understand where we are. So you're given the technologies, basically, the technologies are games, basically, for you. That's what they see them as. You don't have the real technologies. So everyone understands that. And the technologies that you do have are military-based technologies for warfare. So again, they're for surveillance and counterintelligence first and foremost. Every time you're talking on your phone, you can be heard. Okay? Everything you type is monitored. Okay? And can be used against you. All right? So we have to understand what the technology is, what it's for, where it's headed, why it's going there, what's this transhumanism thing, what's the purpose of it, how it relates to COVID, 5G, how is this all connected? Because what happened in 2020 is people were making a mistake of thinking that COVID was 5G technology. All right. And that's not really what was taking place. All right. Now, what was taking place is people were mistaking many COVID examinations. People were being said to have COVID, but in essence, they didn't have COVID. What a lot of people had was radiation type of ailments, acute radiation syndrome, and things of that nature from your digital phone, from your computers, and things of that nature, because you are dealing with radio waves, electromagnetic waves, and frequencies, and things of that nature. All right. And when you look at what they say the COVID effects are, right? The side effects of COVID are the same as acute radiation syndrome, literally to the T. The
So,
lung issues, all of those different things. I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, as you were speaking, brother, I pulled up one of the patents that we
Okay.
discussed on the last show, just to basically validate what you were saying about the patents.
Mm-hmm.
This patent is patent number 103 69255.
Mm-hmm.
Scaffolds comprising nano electronic components for cells, tissues, and other applications.
Hmm.
Abstract. The present invention generally relates to nanoscale wires and tissue engineering.
Hmm.
The various embodiment cell scaffolds for growing cells or tissues can be formed that include nanoscale wires that can be connected to electronic circuits extending externally of the cell scaffold. The
Mm-hmm.
nanoscale wires can be formed in integral part of cells or tissues grown from the cell scaffold and can even be determined or controlled
Mm-hmm.
using various electronic circuits. This approach allows for the creation of fundamentally new types of functionalized cells and tissues due to the high degree of electron control offered by the nanoscale wires and electronic circuits. Accordingly, such cell scaffolds can be used to grow cells or tissues which can be determined and or controlled at very high resolutions
Mm.
due to the present right. Due to the presence of nanoscale wires, and such cell scaffolds will find a wide variety of novel means new,
Mm-hmm.
applications, including applications in tissue engineering, prosthetics, pacemakers, implants, or the like. This is a grant filed July 21st, 2016.
Mm.
Date of patent was August 6, 2019.
Mm.
Assignee, presidents and fellows of Harvard College,
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Children's
Mm-hmm.
Medical Center Incorporation, inventors, Charles M. Lieber, who we talked about on the last show,
Mm-hmm.
who was arrested and indicted essentially for espionage and sharing proprietary information. And he was working in association with the Wuhan Institute of Virology,
Mm-hmm.
where the COVID-19 virus was created.
Mm. So
Okay.
that's 10 years old.
So, huh?
That's 10 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, now, again, the the COVID-19 virus was developed at the Wuhan lab, uh, Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China,
Mm-hmm.
simultaneous with the development of the mRNA vaccines, which included the nanoparticles that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Lieber was one of the people who were working on those mRNA vaccines that included those nanoparticles. Okay, so they developed the virus concurrent with the vaccine, which is why I do not go with the suggestion that it escaped accidentally.
Right.
Okay, and so I put this on the screen just basically to validate what Brother Sadiki was saying. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to pull up some other articles as well.
Excellent. Now,
Okay,
how the system? Oh, go ahead, brother.
um, this is an article comes from that comes from a publication called the Freedom Articles. I forget the brother's name or the dude's name who does this, but he does very good work. Um, and so again, to validate what Brother Sadiki was just talking about, uh, this article is called "Delivery Systems for Nanochips and Smart Dust."
Mm-hmm.
He says the fundamental way vaccines, GMOs, bioengineered food, geoengineering, and chemtrails are all connected, as they are delivery systems whereby this miniature technology of nanochips and smart dust is planned to be inserted into our bodies. Some chemtrails contain smart dust motes, which readily infiltrate the body, communicate with other motes in your body, set them up on their own network, and which can be, unfortunately, remotely controlled. If you
Yes.
are fastidious about what you eat and what you expose yourself to, it is difficult to see how you can avoid breathing in a mote of smart dust that was dropped on you by a plane spraying chemtrails. With
Hmm.
nanochips and motes inside your body to end New World Order criminals can combine the IoT smart grid with brain mapping and other technological information in there. Let's see. Okay. It says with nanochips and yeah. Okay, yeah. With nanochips and motes inside your body, the NWO New World Order criminals combine the IoT smart grid with brain mapping and other technological information in their attempt to pull off the ultimate endgame to remotely influence and control an entire population by overriding and programming the thoughts, feelings, and actions of the masses, which is what Brother Sadiki said earlier. The
Hmm.
rabbit hole definitely does not stop at nanochips and smart dust. An entire new category of life forms are being forged via synthetic biology. Morgellons fibers are self-aware, self-replicating, and are likely assisting the dark agenda to remotely control the thoughts, feelings, and bodily functions of the entire population. New technology always pushed as being cool, efficient, and convenient. Naturally, the full scope and goal of this agenda will not be revealed to the public. Let's see if I have the list. I don't think I got the whole article, but here is another point that Brother Sadiki was alluding to. He says the human microchipping agenda is really the same thing as the transhumanist agenda to turn
Yes.
mankind into machine, which will ultimately mean becoming not superhuman but subhuman. We
Hmm.
need to be very careful and think critically as we go forward into a world of fantastic technology. Like the servant's knife, it can heal or it can kill. Given everything we know, it would be naive to believe that nanochips will only be used for good. If we're not aware, this technology could be used by the power hungry to enslave us by tricking us with promises of utopia. Nanobots are already being used in Western medicine for all sorts of diseases. Once the smart grid is established, how will you avoid being monitored, tracked, and influenced 24/7 every day of the year? No matter how good the technology becomes, it can never replace the spirit of your consciousness inside of you, which is your internal technology. I'll add that because he didn't. I think I didn't get the whole part of that article, but
Hmm.
but yeah. So I put it out there to basically give more support for what Brother Sadiki is saying, and I know it kind of sounds disconcerting and scary,
Yeah.
but you need to know, what's actually going on,
Hmm.
and what is being used to be able to control us. Now, one other thing that I was trying to do, but I see that they have removed it, but I still have some of the information. I went back to Moderna's website,
Hmm.
and back when I went to their website back in 2020, the website basically said that the mRNA technology was essentially a software.
Yes.
It was software for reprogramming the DNA.
Yes.
Okay, while they were publicly denying that they were
Hmm.
altering DNA, their own website said that that's exactly what they were doing. That they were basically initiating software to reprogram the DNA. Now,
Hmm.
I went to their in preparation for the show. I went back to their website and they've changed that. So you probably became aware that we were on to them, and they took that down.
Mhm.
But let's see, let me go ahead and speak. I'll pull that up
Okay.
while you could go ahead and speak on what I
Okay.
just put up.
So mRNA, let's even take it a step further. It's an operating system. That's what mRNA is. We as humans are operating systems. Okay. So everyone understand that. Your creativity, your imagination, your intuition, your spirit, your soul, your central nervous system, your subconscious mind, your neurological self, all these things are operating systems. Okay. AI, the attempt is to mimic them, those things, your consciousness, your beingness. That's what AI is. It's what they are attempting to do with AI. All right. So they are mimicking you as an operating system to control and take over your operating system. Now, some key words were mentioned when Sarah was reading the research, the articles. Smart. So everyone understands when you hear smart, whatever, smart technology, smartphones, whatever you're hearing with smart. Smart is actually an acronym. I don't think a lot of people understand this. SMART is self-monitoring, analysis, reporting, technology. So when you hear smartphone, it's a self-monitoring, analysis, reporting, technology. When you hear smart city, it's a self-monitoring, analysis, reporting, technology. Everyone needs to understand that. Now, everything that Sarah laid out, there is a slogan that they have literally beat into the consciousness of people, which is AI is the future. Everything Sarah just laid out, that is your AI is the future. I hope everyone can understand what's being said. Your AI is the future is the smart cities or the 15-minute cities. That's the future that they're talking about. The digital ID. That's the future that they're talking about. The ability to remote control you, your central nervous system, so on and so forth, your being. That is the future that they are talking about. A future of surveillance and counterintelligence. All right. These dots are very easy to connect. This is why the brother was talking about an AI grid. I think that's how he referred to it. All right. You also have a human control grid. So this is what I was talking about on the last show. Also earlier, right? So not only are we talking about a grid externally outside of us in that environment, but also a grid internally to control you internally. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. Now, let me give you a little bit of the game. So when Sarah was reading on the mRNA, okay, and the nanobots, the way that they're going to promote it to you, meaning the government, they're going to promote it to you from a standpoint of a medical revolution, so to speak. All right. Or the evolution of the medical system, meaning being able to use AI to assist with cancer and, all these different diseases and things of that nature that are killing people. Okay. So that's the way they're going to promote it publicly. They're not going to, and I'm not saying it can't be used for that because it can. But the other side of it, they will not talk to you about. Just like these digital phones, they don't tell you what the digital phones are really for. Okay. They don't tell you what these other smart technologies are really for, smart dust and all these different things. They're not telling you what it's for. And it's a reason. All right. So when you deal with government, the way it's moving forward is what's called an algocracy. Okay. So I'm just giving snapshots for people to understand. Algocracy. Okay. All right. So we're talking about algorithms, okay, or algo. We're talking about algorithms, okay? That's what they are talking about and implementing from a standpoint of government, how the government will be ran, so to speak, um, totalitarianism through AI and algorithms, okay? They're already doing it in regards to the voting systems for when you vote for the president and things of that nature. So it's already fully embedded from a standpoint of algorithmic racism and bias. Okay, I don't want to go too far over there. So central banking, digital currency, all of these different things. These are digital prisons, human control grid, smart technology, smart cities. These are digital prisons, digital ID, so on and so forth. Biometric intelligence. These are digital prisons, facial recognition. All right. So everyone understand this is why they are headed in this direction. They talked about it in 2010 in the, what is it? The white pages or papers?
Papers.
White papers. They talked about it in 2010. I gave you 2011 with the nanotechnology initiative, as well as the Obama Brain Project. And we can give you tons and tons and tons of other operations that's related to this. All right. Even the most recent one, Project Stargate, 500 billion given for AI technology, which is primarily the data centers, which is more so for the next level of the G technology, which is 6G. Okay. So all that is already laid out. All that is already documented. So that's where we are. So wherever you want to go, brother, proceed.
Okay. I pulled up something from PubMed.gov, which is part of the National Institute of Health.
Okay.
I pulled this up again, and mind you, I found this back in 2020, but this also contradicts any suggestion that Dr. Fauci was not aware of the adverse effects of the vaccines. Now, so this was his own agency, okay? And so this, I don't know if I want to call it, well, I guess you could say it's an article, but the article was published on the National Institute of Health's website. It's called Effects of Graphene Oxide Nanoparticles on the Immune System Biomarkers Produced by Raw 264.7 in Human Whole Blood Cell Cultures. And I mentioned graphene oxide because graphene oxide nanoparticles are in the vaccines. Graphene oxide nanoparticles have attracted a lot of attention due to their many applications. These applications include batteries, supercapacitors, drug delivery, and biosensing. However, few studies have investigated the effects of these nanoparticles on the immune system. In this study, the in vitro effects of graphene oxide nanoparticles on the immune system was evaluated by exposing murine macrophages, raw 264.7 cells, and human whole blood cell cultures to the GONPs, the graphene oxide nanoparticles. The effects of graphene oxide nanoparticles on applications. These applications, the effects of the graphene oxide nanoparticles on raw cells were monitored under basal conditions. The whole blood cell cultures were exposed to, we'll just say GONPs for short, which for short for graphene oxide nanoparticles, in the presence of or absence of mitogens like lipopolysaccharide and phytohemagglutinin, PHA. A number of parameters were monitored for both raw and whole blood cultures. These included cytotoxicity, inflammatory biomarkers, cytokines, of the acquired immune system and pretome pretome profile analysis. These GOMPs were cytotoxic to both raw and whole blood cell cultures at 500 UG/ml. In the absence of LPS, mitogens, lipose, polysaccharide, GOMPs elicited an inflammatory response from the murine macrophage. Raw and whole blood cultures at 15.6 and 5 UG/ml respectively. This activation was further corroborated by pretome profile analysis of both experimental cultures, GOMP, of the acquired immune system and pretome profile analysis. Okay, excuse me. This activation was further corroborated by protome profile analysis of both experimental cultures. GOMPs inhibited LPS, induced interleukin 6 synthesis, and PHA induced interferon gamma synthesis by whole blood cell cultures in a dose-dependent manner. In the absence of mitogens, GOMPs stimulated IL synthesis by whole blood cell cultures. The current study shows that graphene oxide nanoparticles modulate immune system biomarkers, and that these may pose a health risk to individuals exposed to this type of nanoparticle. Okay, I'll go back one. It says these included cytotoxicity, inflammatory biomarkers, cytokines of the acquired immune system in a pretome profile analysis. The graphene nanoparticles elicited an inflammatory response. Okay, I brought that up because this is what has occurred with a number of people who have suddenly died after having taken the vaccine. They had inflammatory response. They had their bloodstream blocked. They had blood clots formed. They died of some neural issues as a result of the blood clots. Okay, so they were very aware back when they were developing this technology and testing it that they could pose a major health risk to individuals exposed. Yet they put it out on the market anyway. And I just posted today on Facebook the death of another athlete who I think was only 34 years old. I forget which sport that he played, but he died and they had no explanation for his death.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
I mean, well, prior to COVID, we know that this was not something that we heard of. I played football and ran track for years, brother. People wasn't falling out on the field all over the world in whatever sport. Like it's just not something that you saw often, right? You didn't see a Hank Gather situation often. Right. You see what I'm saying? To where once COVID hit, we saw people falling out on the different fields immediately, consistently, right? So pretty sure if the proper research was done, right, the proper science was done on those bodies, we would know exactly what it's related to. Okay, we do know based on die suddenly and what the pathologists, the people who deal with the dead bodies, what they saw in regards to the microclots, the thrombosis, and things of that nature. It was something that they never saw before prior to COVID. So it wasn't even the natural way that they were used to seeing blood clots, so to speak. Right. So these are facts. We know that this exists. COVID itself, we understand like the undermining, the treachery, the vow, the lies. You know, we're clear on all the things that happened, the misinformation. Like we can easily document those things from the CDC to the World Health Organization to, you know, everyone involved. That's easy to document because it's documented. They said it, they reported it. So, you know, those are things that I think due to the programming, people have a hard time really dealing with. Also, because that mirror is so cold blooded, oftentimes people just never want to really look in the mirror and deal with the truth, deal with the responsibility of their decisions and the accountability and things of that nature. To understand that just to be blunt, they were hustled and those types of things. So that's what we're seeing right now all over social media, which that division is taking place as opposed to, you know, people just understanding that those of us who knew and understood was just attempting to help people who may have not understood, to assist them and their families and their loved ones to, you know, not have to go through much of what, you know, many of them went through because they either got the jab, took the PCR test, or, you know, whatever the situation may have been. So yeah, man, it's just, you know, in hindsight, I know I can personally say I'm grateful for the people who accepted the knowledge and the wisdom and the research, and they definitely have shown their appreciation and you know them being grateful. Um, you know, but I do wish that it was more people who would have listened, right? But I do understand why they didn't. I'm fully aware, you know, of the programming and how it works. So you know, it's difficult to sit here and to see the effects that you know is going to happen. You know the type of people it's going to happen to. You know why, you know when, you know where, you know the answer to all of those things. Who, you know all of those answers. So, you know, I know we do this work every day, but it's still difficult sometimes to see and experience people who are dealing with those things, you know, who
Yeah,
because of the programming, you know what I mean?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, as you had mentioned before, when you were talking about, you know, the basically those who worked in um, uh, mortuaries,
Yeah.
who were dealing with people who had passed away, um, and were embalming them. Uh,
Hmm.
they noted some irregularities when they were looking at them, as well as the people who did autopsies on
Yes.
those people. They noted irregularities, and but they were silenced. They were not allowed to speak on what they had found. They found these blood clots, and they found these um, synthetic organisms
Hmm.
in the bloodlines of these people who were died, and those were the things that cause blood clots. Carrie Madej, Dr. Carrie Madej,
Hmm.
had spoken out about, you know, what she had found, and she had visited some of the people who had performed autopsies, and she saw these synthetic organisms that developed from the injections of these nanoparticles, and they looked like basically synthetic parasites.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh yeah.
And you know, and also I want to, you know, again provide some information to validate what Brother Sadiki said. We're talking about the mRNA. It
Hmm.
says the mRNA is very unstable, thus it needs a biosphere to protect it. That's why they kept it stored in very high cold environments, because it was unstable. Um, Thus, it needs a biosphere to protect it until it can enter the cell. This is provided by the lipid nanoparticles in graphene oxide, which is 4,000 times stronger than titanium and can stand uh, 1,700 F temperatures, and is an excellent conductor of electricity and can
Hmm.
host magnetic field. Graphene oxide is not listed in the patent applications because A, it is poisonous to humans, and B, because it is the main ingredient in hydrogel, which can be used to create a brain-computer interface in a drug delivery system. Though Kingston notes that this is not possible with this round of vaccines because they rushed this thing out, and they're just seeing how much they can put into people before they die. The graphene oxide in the vaccines is neutrally charged, inactive. However, when it becomes positively charged, such as by electromagnetic radiation, radio frequencies such as wireless devices, wireless networks such as 5G, etc., it will annihilate anything it comes into contact with, and therefore cause great damage and death depending upon how much of it exists in the body and where it's located. Multiple COVID-19 vaccines and booster shots may increase the amount of the graphene oxide in the body. The COVID-19 vaccine study should have been stopped when, during a study with mice, 80% died within 24 hours, and the remainder died within the next few days. I have still so much information here, and I don't feel like I've even touched the surface of it. We could go on for probably another 3 hours, but we're not. Anything that you want to say to the information I just provided, or any things that you want to share with the listeners before we close out for tonight?
Well, it's great information has been shared. It's documented information. It can easily be researched. We gave you things that you can research. We gave you names. We gave you the projects themselves. We gave you a lot that you can go and research on your own, and please do that, because when you research for yourself, it's embedded further into your consciousness. So go do the research yourself. All right. Also, I know we talked about, nanotechnology and smart technology, transhumanism, covert 19, and all the things that we talked about. But I just want to preface that the greatest technology is you. It's not artificial intelligence. It's not nanotechnology. It's not synthetic intelligence. It's you. Okay. So everyone is clear. Your intuition, your imagination, your connection to the ancestors, nature, the universe, all of those things, your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, that is the greatest technology that exists. This is the reason for the fear-based programming, the trauma-based programming, the emotional-based programming, the psychological operations, all the things dealing with trauma and fear, period. The media programming, all the things that's part of that paradigm is so that you are not tapping into the greatest being that ever exists. And that's you. Let's do that work. Let's get back to being these divine brothers and sisters that we are, getting back to being the progeny of the ancestors. They did all these great things that is the foundation for all these great things. We are those people. We can still do it. We just have to deprogram and reprogram ourselves from all the programs that's being used as blockages. All right. So instead of talking about quote unquote God, it's time to now activate and implement so-called God consciousness, God beingness, and God personification. And that's what I'll leave everyone with.
Absolutely. Everything that we are looking for already exists within us. There's no need to look outside of ourselves. Everything that we need for happiness, to create our own reality, we need to not look outside of ourselves. We need not look into AI for assistance. Everything that we need has always been, and will always be within us. And that's what our great ancestors have laid out for us in the spiritual teachings, the technology for us to be able to tune ourselves in to the divinity that lies within us. And we are being distracted uh, by those who have a difficult time being able to connect, looking for shortcuts and trying to circumvent and become God, to basically create microwave enlightenment through
Yes.
technology.
Yes.
But the technology, as Brother Sadiki said, exists within us. And that's why they distract us from going deep into and have hidden the
Yeah.
esoteric spiritual teachings and are trying to circumvent that and distract us and move us into trying to attain it through technology, which they can use to be able to control us. And
Yes.
do that through fear,
Mm-hmm.
as we talked about. Okay, so don't go for it.
That's
You can
right.
reach out to either Siddiqui or I, and we can give you great instruction on how you can tune into yourself.
Yeah.
Who you do it with is of no concern as long as you do it.
What's the title of your show, brother?
Journey into self.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we thank our guest, Brother Sadiki, for coming on and sharing his insights and his research. You know, we thank you all for tuning in, and we trust that you found this information informative. And I co-sign on what Brother Sadiki said. Do your own research. You know, as I said, Brother George Clinton from Parliament Funkadelic says, think it ain't illegal yet. And it's time. We need to start thinking for ourselves because they're trying to think for us. Program, deprogram, reprogram. We need to start reprogramming ourselves and start to think and be discerning about the information that we take in and that which we believe. Don't believe anything. Research it for ourselves, and that is something that we were taught well. Both of us were taught well by Brother Steve Coakley, our great ancestor. So with that, thank you for joining us here on Journey into Self, and we'll see you next time. We'll maybe talk about if we want to do part 3. All right, so thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Hotel.